Hi, welcome back to CS170 Spring Session. We're going to be going into Chapter 17. This will be the introduction to JavaScript. Um, Try to put this in a way so that everyone, like everyone should know, like when we step into this class, everyone is assumed to have little to no computer programming experience, right? So we're going to try to start very basic here. At the same time, maybe even at the speed that I'm going, it might still be a little bit fast. So do replay it. I'll try to provide enough resources, examples that you can work off of. And then anything else that's still a gap, we'll have the lab hours, of course. So first thing I want to do is, let me go over here. So again, these will be sort of like your learning objectives, okay? And remember, let me go back to here. Excuse me. Where are we at here? Home, the allow sections. Coming up slow here. Coming up very slow for some reason today. Okay, so remember over here, you had from the earlier lectures about pseudocode and flowchart. Of course, here's the reading resources, which again you'll see in your modules, but it's here on my page. I just wish this stuff would load faster. Okay, so basically you have the readings. So this was like for the earlier lectures, and you'll see these things here, which I already put um, into my resources, vocabulary, and so on and so forth, right? So I think again you'll see these types of things, which if you don't understand what they are, make sure you you let us know. Um, this is part of like what you're gonna need to know for JavaScript. And let me see here. You see all of this here under chapter 17. And you have these here. I think I'm gonna probably add something onto my page here. It'll be similar to kind of what I've always emphasized in this course about coming up with examples for each of the different types of things, right? Whether it's your variable declaration or all the other things that you need to do to do stuff in JavaScript, right? And what I mean by that is the other thing I want to introduce is this thing called js.do, right? You can see that up here, js.do. If you type that into your browser, you'll get something like this. So this is almost like the HTML5 editor thing that I showed you before when we were doing the HTML stuff. So now this is for JavaScript. But the same idea. You type stuff here on the left-hand side, and then magically on the right-hand side, you'll get something. Okay. Don't worry about the exact syntax or whatnot, because I'm going to be doing it with you. But you'll see here practically all the different things, not all of it, but a lot of it, in terms of like your variables, functions. You see for loop, you have your if statement here. All of these different types of things you have to document right, you have to alert, So it's almost like a whole bunch of mini examples here of different things you should know, right? There's some other stuff, obviously, but this covers a lot of stuff here. So just by typing in js.do, you'll get stuff like this, right? But I'll try to find some other resources to also put in here. Again, the main idea I'm really trying to push is the resource examples. And then once you have that, you play around with it yourself, and then you take notes on it, keep it for your open notes when you're actually going to have to do some of this coding for your assignment or for your exam. Okay, so I've said this in the past, and I'll say it again. This is kind of how I believe is the best way for you to learn this stuff and to have some reference. So when you actually have to do this code yourself, you can look at some examples and do it. Okay. So this is js.do. Now, the thing with HTML5 editor, which I gave to you before, and what you may see with this js.do, this is not the same thing as when you save your HTML file. Okay, so for some people, they were a little confused about how do I do something then. So let me go back to here, and let me open up this sample HTML here. Okay, so come on. Here we go. I open up, wait, I did a right mouse button, and then you have the, I do an edit with Notepad++. On the Apple side of things, you guys might be using Atom, okay? So all it is like, well, here's my HTML file, right? And note that I put a .html, so that's why it's a HTML file, okay? So you have all of this stuff here that you notice is not here. Okay, so this is a proper HTML file. So this is just kind of showing, well, here's the JavaScript and here's what it looks like over here. So what you would do, I mean, one way to do it, probably the easiest thing for you to do, you can see up here, you can actually save it too, right? But one of the easiest things you can do is, let's say I would take this, highlight all of this stuff here, let's say something like that, and then I would copy it into here. So let me say, for the sake of argument, let me just put it all here, right? You see what I did there? So I just copied it over here and pasted it into here. All right, this is not the only way to do it, but I think for us, this will be the easiest way to do it. Okay, so if you're wondering, well, okay, I used this, this is kind of good, so I can see my stuff coming up here instantly. But now how do I save it into my HTML file so I can submit it as part of my assignment? This is how I would do it. Okay, so you do this here, then you paste it into here, and you're good to go. Okay, so let me close this up. So remember this, js.do. I find it pretty useful, if you ask me. All right, so this is what I would do to be able to do stuff and then see the results like right away. Okay, so enough with that. Let me get back to the PowerPoint. All right, so anyway, here's all the different things, and it should pretty much match up to what I just showed you on the resources from the textbook. So you want to look at all of these, make sure you understand what all of these different concepts mean. I'll try to talk you through them as we go through here. Okay, so here, so the point is trying to make this like, here's the head of your HTML file, and then here's the body, and you can put the script here. All right, so generally, kind of what I would do is, let's say I have a function, right? And don't worry that you don't know what a function is. I'll explain what a function is later. But let's say I have a function that can be accessed, anywhere, throughout the HTML. Then I might choose to kind of put it up here at the top, right? Because then it's kind of easy for me to kind of look to one place to look at all of my different functions that could be accessed multiple times, let's say. If you put it here in your body along with all of your other stuff, it's just going to be a little bit painful to kind of debug things or track things down. So I think a rule of thumb, a heuristic, you might say, put all of the general functions that you're going to call multiple times is up here in the head where it says this script here, right? And then stuff that is actually kind of related to, like, in respect to like your text or whatever you have here. Like, you're asking for input, let's say. You're trying to input some information from the user. You're going to display something, whatever, right there and then is relative to that. Then you would kind of put it into your code here with the body. Okay. I don't want to spend too much time on this because there's some stuff in there that hasn't been taught to you yet. But that's kind of the general idea of how I would look at this, right? But really what they're trying to say here is you can put the JavaScript up here in the top and at the bottom, okay? Your head or your body of your HTML, okay? So let's leave it at that for now. All right, so it's basically just saying like, okay, this is what you do to make various statements in JavaScript, okay? This point here catches a lot of people, the fact that it's case sensitive, okay? I think last week I saw a lot of people with some HTML issues, and even though they might have used some of the editors that kind of highlighted keywords and stuff like that, it's just because maybe you're new to using this stuff. It wasn't quite apparent to you that you had a spelling mistake, right? So it's very common we have some spelling mistake, and that's why something's not working, right? So whatever keyword you misspelled it and it didn't work, let's say your image or something like that, right? But now you kind of have this extra dimension here with JavaScript being case sensitive, right? And when they say case sensitive, it means uppercase and lowercase. There's a difference, okay? It's not the same thing. And you want to be careful with that. Basically, it catches out a lot of people if you name your variables inappropriately, so it's easy to mix things up. Or it's easy to forget that you have an uppercase versus a lowercase. That all kind of comes back to haunt you later if you're not very careful with it. So this point here about being case sensitive, do note this because I see a lot of bugs or issues with things working because of this. Okay, so this is an important point here. Okay, and then you have this idea of syntax versus convention. Okay, and I'll kind of get more into that, right? But generally, like when you're looking at a programming language, syntax is important, right? If you don't get the syntax right, the damn thing doesn't work, right? Convention means your code will still work, but generally there's a convention for a reason, right? The convention could be so that you make things more easily readable by other people who want to look at your code, as an example. Maybe it's easier for you to read your own code if you follow a certain convention, right? There's one of those things, if you're very sloppy with things and you're disorganized with things, you may eventually get your piece of code to work, but it doesn't scale, right? When you get into anything significant, larger, it becomes a nightmare for you to try to support it, try to make changes to it, whatever. And so that's where a lot of times these conventions will come in. They say, oh, you should, you should structure like how your code looks like in a certain way. You should, put out like diagnostic or error messages in a certain way. You should name your variables in a certain way. You should display your variables in a certain way. All that kind of stuff. Generally, they're more for like you and other people who might be looking at your code to more easily understand what's going on, to maintain the code and stuff like that. Okay. Again, I won't dwell too much on that, but there's like this idea of syntax versus convention. Okay. All right. So first things first, what's a variable? So a variable is something that holds a value. I think of it as like a bucket, right? So a bucket that you can put something in there. So I have bucket A, right? In this case, that's a memory location. It holds a value. And, it's something that is separate from the value that's inside the bucket, okay? And so there's a syntax for how you can name these variables, right? So let's say I decide to call the variable a. That works. Um, so syntactically, that's okay. But maybe if you're writing a big program, from a convention standpoint, um, that's probably not good, right? You don't want to really, let's say you have, for the sake of argument, you have 26 variables and you just call them A, B, C, all the way up to Z. Um, Generally, we want the names of the variables to mean something, be something meaningful for the users or for whoever that's looking at this code, right? So that's one convention, right? But here's on the syntax side. Um, this part, it has to start with a letter. So if you see a variable that starts off with, like, let's say 1, 2, 3, that's not a valid variable. That will break the code, right? So that's why it's under syntax here. So once you start off with that letter, let's say A, or like cat or dog or something like that, then you can put in some numbers, okay? Or letters, right? So you can put that in there. And you can also put in something like an underscore, right? Or something like a $sign. This is important. You cannot put spaces in there, right? You might be used to, let's say, in your file system, your folders and stuff like that, or your files, to put spaces in there. I guess in the old days you couldn't really do that. Now you can on more recent days. But here for JavaScript, no spaces for your variable names. Okay, so that's important there. Oops, oh my, oh, crap. So here, this is what I said about, like, you could name your variables A, B, C, D, but convention-wise, you want to be descriptive, right? Again, if you're not descriptive, it's really a bear to try to debug this or understand, what's going on in your program, right? So if you're dealing with, you're calculating the total for your bill, then you probably say something like declare a variable called total bill, right? And I'll probably do it in camel case, which is described further down here, right? And say total bill. Okay, all one. Remember, there's no spaces, right? So, and this is another convention here. You don't have to do it that way. But in this case, they're declaring tax amount, right? So it's a descriptive, right? It's better than A, right? And the one word leading to the second word, that first letter of that second word, they made it uppercase. That's why it's a little red here. Okay, so this is what they mean by camel case. So every time you start off with a new word, I don't know, let's for the sake of argument, let's say tax amount, um, bucket, right? Tax amount bucket, right? So then I would have a B here, capital B, and then bucket, UCKET, right? That will be considered camel case. Again, this is a convention. So every time you switch over to a new word, that first letter becomes uppercase, right? And then the first letter is lowercase. That's why that's a lowercase t. Okay, so this is all convention. This is all to make your program more readable and understandable for other people, whether it's other programmers or other users. Okay, all right. So this is a very quick view on it. Let's go to the next one where we actually have some variable names. Okay, I'm going to leave this for you as extra credit. Okay, so you can, however you want to do it. You want to type this in, or you want to take a screenshot, print it out, and write it yourself, however you want to do it. Take a picture, send it to me, or something like that, right? Up to you. Um, Tell me whether these are legal or illegal, okay? And I'm going to add one thing here. Oh, actually, I can't do that. This is a picture. I'll I'll add it when I actually export this out later. Let me squeeze this up a little bit and insert. Do this here. And all right, it doesn't look that good right now. I just put it here at the bottom. By the time I print this out, maybe I'll make this look a little bit better. I'm gonna say something like this. Camel case. I shouldn't do that. I should do camel case. Ample with 3-word variable. Okay, so don't worry, I'll clean this up. I shouldn't do that. I should do like a 3, like that. Okay, so I want you, for your extra credit, I want you to look at this, or tell me which of these are legal, illegal, and maybe you can tell me why. That would be nice, right? So tell me why. I'll add a column here to say why. And the last bit, I want you to tell me an example. Just make up an example of a 3-word variable and show it to me in camel case. Okay? So again, I'll repeat myself again. Here's the variable. Is it legal, illegal? Why? Right? There's no why here. I'll put a y here. And camel case example, 3-word variable. Okay? So if you can do that, I think that will be a good refresher for all the stuff that we just covered here. And here, well, very conveniently, it shows you all of this here, which is fine. So you go ahead and just show me that you did this. And to me, when you write this stuff down, it just helps to reinforce the understanding of this. So you have a very easy extra credit this week. Okay, so this and this, right? That's pretty much it here. But don't forget, I asked you for camel case example, so make sure you do that. Okay. And you know, just to reiterate on the point about the extra credit, I'm not really saying they're grading your extra credit. This is really, when I do this stuff, it's really for you to take notes for yourself to prepare for the exam. You know, like on the HTML table, I think some people just kind of just put the table in there without any sort of like styling or anything like that. I mean, that's okay. But like I said, I'm telling you for the exam, you're going to be doing the HTML table with styling, right? There's going to be like column span, you know, formatting, whatever, right? It's not just like a straightforward table, right? That's kind of like a slam dunk, right? So I want you to kind of do that with the idea that you're trying to take notes for yourself to practice for the exam. Okay, so you can give me a table with no styling. It doesn't really matter to me. I'll take it. I'm not really grading it. I give you these extra credits really to help you to prepare for the exam. Okay? Okay. Well, okay. So you have E and F. Those are pretty good examples of not meaningful variables, right? So if you look at it, right, you can probably very quickly think about what are meaningful variables, okay? And here we go. So you got E for the height, F for the width, and area is the area, right? That sounds pretty decent. You look at it, you can understand right away what is it that is our variables, what are we putting in there. And now we added a red box, or a red rectangle I should say. And so now we want to make it even more meaningful to distinguish between this one and this one. So that's where we add in like a blue height, blue width, and blue area. Okay, and this is another way to kind of do these combo word variables, right? To put an underscore in between. Okay, it's a style thing. Some people like to do variables like this. Some people like to do the camel case. Up to you. Doesn't matter, right? These are just examples of some sort of convention to follow so that you can have very descriptive variable names. Okay. Let me take a pause here and I'll cut another video to go more into variables. Okay, so I'm going to stop here.